It's getting late early on the Philadelphia Phillies season, and if you've been paying any attention to the news coming out of Citizens Bank Park over the past few days, you'd know that something genuinely unsettling is brewing beneath the surface. Yes, they're losing games. Yes, the pitching staff has been absolutely brutalized in stretches. Yes, Alec Boehm continues to look like a man who has never held a baseball bat before in his entire life. But the real story, the one that's keeping Philly Nation up at night, the one that absolutely has to matter going forward, involves a young prospect that Dave Dombrowski once promised would be an everyday player the moment he stepped onto the big league field. His name is Aidan Miller, and right now he's either on the verge of superstardom or potentially becoming a cautionary tale about a franchise squandering another generational opportunity. We need to talk about this, because the answers we're getting from the front office are worse than no answers at all. Let's be totally honest with ourselves for a second before we dive too deep into the weeds here. The 2026 season was supposed to be different for this organization. They made moves, they signed guys. They had a clear plan to compete in a brutal National League East. What we got instead was Aaron Nola looking absolutely cooked despite being in the middle of the order rotation, Taijuan Walker getting absolutely dog-walked every single time they roll him out there like some kind of ritual sacrifice, and an infield situation that has become downright murky. I saw a stat today that Taijuan Walker has allowed more first-inning runs than like 20 teams in the entire MLB right now. That's not just bad, that's historically, staggeringly bad. I actually pray that we're seeing the last Taijuan Walker start that we get, because at a certain point, you have to understand that some guys are just not equipped for the moment anymore, and the kindest thing you can do is let them ride off into the sunset with some dignity intact. But here's the thing that really matters, and this is what separates the noise from the signal. You can live with a struggling pitcher. You can absolutely handle a rough patch from your offense. What you cannot survive in this league is uncertainty about your future at critical positions. And that brings us directly to Aidan Miller and the bizarre mystery surrounding his injury status that has become impossible to ignore. Aidan Miller is a player that the Phillies drafted. He's a player that they have invested an enormous amount of resources into. He's a player that the front office speaks about in terms that suggest a long-term foundational piece to this franchise's plans going forward. He's been on this channel more times than we can count, and every single conversation about him has been wildly positive. This is a kid that looks like a ball player. He's got the tools, the athleticism, the baseball instincts, and most importantly, he's shown a genuine commitment to improving himself and doing whatever his team needs him to do. Dave Dombrowski has literally gone on the record saying that when Aidan Miller comes up to the majors, he will be an everyday player. That's not a throwaway statement from a general manager. That's a promise. That's a plan. That's a franchise blueprint. Which is exactly why the current situation has become so concerning that it's almost impossible to talk about anything else without addressing it directly. So let's unpack what we actually know and what we're being told by the people in charge. According to the latest injury update coming out of the Phillies organization, Aidan Miller is on the 7-day minor league injured list with lower back soreness. Now that sounds simple enough on the surface. Back soreness happens to athletes all the time. The problem is that this back soreness has prevented him from doing literally anything. When reports started circulating that Miller had begun swinging a bat, the Phillies made it crystal clear that this was absolutely false. Not true. Didn't happen. Miller has not swung a bat. He's only progressing through what they call rotational exercises, which I assume means stretching and mobility work and that sort of thing. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. Dave Dombrowski came out and contradicted that completely by saying that yes, Miller has started swinging a bat. Quote, "It's step-by-step daily. I can't tell you what he did today, for example, but yes, he has started to swing a bat. He's been making progress, but we're guiding him through it." That quote right there perfectly encapsulates the entire problem with how this organization has handled the narrative around Miller's situation. On one hand, you have official statements saying he hasn't swung. On the other hand, you have the general manager saying he has. The team then felt compelled to correct the record and clarify that Miller has not yet begun swinging a bat. This is a catastrophically bad look for communication and transparency. This is the kind of confusion that breeds distrust. This is the kind of mixed messaging that makes fans and observers like us immediately assume the absolute worst about the situation. And here's where we need to talk about something that's been bothering a lot of people in the Philly Nation. Dave Dombrowski keeps citing HIPAA regulations as his reason for not providing additional details about Miller's treatment or his condition. I get it. I understand privacy rights. I respect that ball players are entitled to medical privacy just like any other person. But let's be real for a second. Other organizations throughout baseball have found ways to be far more transparent about injury situations without violating anyone's rights or privacy. The veil of secrecy doesn't make anything better. It makes everything worse. The more guarded you are with information, the more people assume the worst. The more you deflect with medical privacy arguments, the more everyone starts to wonder if there's something truly serious going on that nobody wants to talk about. I've been screaming about this for years in the context of Joel Embiid and the 76ers. When you're constantly cagey about medical information, people start to assume a player is soft or not really injured. When you're transparent, when you communicate, when you give actual details, all parties look better. The Phillies have an opportunity to be transparent here with Aidan Miller, and instead they're being as vague as humanly possible. We've even got MLB insider Tom Verducci from Sports Illustrated going on record saying that this could be a matter of months for Miller, not weeks. Months. Do you understand what that means for the timeline of this team's season? That's not something you can just gloss over or hope goes away quietly. That's a major piece of information that completely changes how you have to be thinking about your future. But the Dombrowski quotes keep coming, and they keep getting more and more frustrating. We're just happy with his progress. He's happy with his progress. We're with him every single day. We watch him. We treat him. He's doing good right now. But it's one of those things you don't just go from swinging a bat one day and then playing a game today. You're taking your time. Okay, so progress is being made. That's the good news. But the phrase really slowly is absolutely not what you want to hear when you're talking about a player that's supposed to be the future of your franchise. It makes it sound like we're celebrating moral victories instead of actual tangible steps forward. It makes it sound like they're hoping this thing goes away rather than having a concrete plan to get this kid back on the field and contributing. This brings us to the second part of the crisis, and this is arguably even more pressing when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Alec Boehm, who was supposed to be an established major league player by now, is having what can only be described as an absolutely catastrophic start to this season. I'm talking historically bad. I'm talking about a guy who was the cleanup hitter just a couple weeks ago and is now hitting at the bottom of the lineup with a batting average somewhere in the 150 range. A guy with a 448 OPS. A guy who has 1 double and 1 home run through 16 games. That's not a slump. That's a complete breakdown. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. The team threw Alec Boehm into an absolutely crucial moment during the Cubs game. Bases loaded, 2 outs, trailing by 3 runs in the 8th inning. This was the moment where you win the game. You get 1 swing and you could tie it up and breathe new life into the offense. And Rob Thomson's decision was to pull Brandon Marsh, who has been arguably the best hitter on this team despite the narrative around him, and put Alec Boehm into the game. Now, I understand the logic from a righty versus lefty standpoint. You want to match up your best matchups. You want to put your guy in position to succeed. Except that your guy isn't succeeding at anything right now. Your guy is striking out on 4 pitches against a completely average left-handed pitcher. Your guy is absolutely incapable of hitting a baseball with any consistency whatsoever. The crowd booed. Citizens Bank Park, which is supposed to be one of the best baseball atmospheres in the entire country, booed Alec Boehm. That tells you everything you need to know about the current situation. That tells you that the fan base has lost confidence. That tells you that the team is grasping at straws trying to spark something, anything that might resemble an offensive breakthrough. After the game, Boehm sat down with Kyle Schwarber in the dugout, and this quote is actually kind of heartbreaking when you think about it. I actually just went and just sat next to him, just because I'd rather sit next to him than sit alone. Just kind of reiterating the same thing. I started in the same spot last year and told everyone I'm going to end up hitting 280 this year. Ended up hitting 280. We're in the same spot. So Boehm's banking on the exact same recovery narrative working out this year. He's pointing to last year as proof that things can turn around. He's leaning on past experience and the support of his veteran teammates to stay mentally strong through what has become an absolute nightmare stretch. But here's the problem, and this is where the Aidan Miller injury becomes so critically important. This is a contract year for Alec Boehm. This is the year where the organization has to make a decision about what his future is with this team. Is he a long-term cornerstone? Is he a guy that you can build around? Or is he someone that you should be open to trading if the right offer comes along? We've had conversations for 2 consecutive seasons now about Boehm's future. The organization has made no secret that if the right deal came along, they might entertain moving him. And the only way that makes sense is if you have a clear successor ready and able to step in and take over at third base or wherever the Phillies need him to play. And that successor in their grand plan is supposed to be Aidan Miller. Except Aidan Miller is on the injured list with a mysterious back injury that might keep him out for months. Except the front office is being as vague as possible about his status. Except nobody has any real answers about when he might be back or what his condition actually is. This is the crossroads moment. This is where the Phillies organization has to actually address something head-on instead of hoping it goes away quietly. Dave Dombrowski has made it abundantly clear that when Aidan Miller comes up, he will be an everyday player. He's not coming up to sit on the bench. He's not coming up to fight for at-bats. He's coming up as a fully realized major league talent ready to contribute immediately. The problem is that he can't come up if he can't swing a bat. He can't come up if he's still dealing with lower back soreness that sidelines him in the minor leagues. He can't come up if the organization is spending all its time managing his recovery rather than unlocking his potential. We've also got to talk about the bigger picture here, and this is something that has been bothering us for a little while. The Phillies have a very specific philosophy about player development and promotion. They don't bring guys up just to have them sit on the bench. They want to maximize their time in the minor leagues, get them as many reps as possible, and then promote them to the majors when there's a clear role available. That philosophy makes sense from a development standpoint. It makes sense from a contractual standpoint when you're trying to maintain team control. But the problem is that while they're waiting for Aidan Miller to get healthy and prove himself, they're essentially betting the farm on him being that guy. They're essentially admitting that Alec Bohm might not be their long-term solution. And if Miller doesn't come back healthy, or if he comes back and he's not the player everyone thinks he's going to be, then they've made a massive miscalculation. Miller himself has said all the right things. He's told anyone who will listen that he doesn't care about settling at a particular position. He's comfortable everywhere. He just wants to get to the show. He just wants to play Major League Baseball. That's the mindset you want from a young player. That's the attitude that suggests he's going to be ready when his opportunity comes. The problem is that his opportunity keeps getting pushed further and further down the road, and the organization seems content to let that happen as long as Miller's injury provides them with cover for not having actual answers. Back injuries are legitimately concerning for any athlete. These are the kinds of injuries that can derail careers if they're not handled properly. They're the kinds of injuries that tend to linger. They're the kinds of injuries that sometimes never fully go away. Nobody wants that for Aidan Miller, especially not the Phillies organization that has invested so much into his future. Nobody wants to see a young talent with all this potential derailed by a physical setback. But the silence, the vagueness, the constant deflection about HIPAA regulations, it's all making everything worse, not better. Taijuan Walker is going to get pulled from the rotation soon. That's almost certain at this point. Aaron Nola needs to find whatever he's lost, and there's no guarantee that's coming back anytime soon. The infield is in flux. The offense has stretches where it can't score a run to save their lives. And sitting underneath all of it is this massive question mark about whether Aidan Miller is going to be the solution they're banking on, or whether he's going to become another in a long line of promising prospects that never quite fulfilled their potential. There's still time. There's still a ton of season left to play. Alec Bohm could absolutely turn this thing around. He's done it before. Aidan Miller could get healthy and come back and start his path to the majors. Things can change in baseball faster than you can imagine. But right now, with the information we have and the communication we're getting from the front office, it's hard not to feel like there's something being hidden, something not being said, something that everyone is hoping will just quietly go away if they ignore it long enough. So here's what we need from Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thomson and the entire Phillies organization. We need clarity. We need transparency. We need actual updates about Aidan Miller's condition, his prognosis, his timeline. We need to understand what the plan is if he's not ready by a certain point in the season. We need to know what's going to happen with Alec Bohm if that plan falls apart. We need answers, not vague platitudes and HIPAA explanations that leave more questions than they solve. For now, pour out some prayers for Aidan Miller. Hopefully he gets healthy and this doesn't become an issue that haunts this organization for years to come. Hopefully he comes back stronger than ever and proves that the investment was worth it. But the clock is ticking and the margin for error is getting smaller by the day. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update on what's happening with the Phillies. Drop a comment down below and let us know your level of trust with Aidan Miller and your level of trust with this organization. Are you still believing in the long-term plan, or has this mystery around Miller's injury and the Bohm struggles started to shake your faith? We want to hear from Philly Nation. Hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when we break down the next big story coming out of Citizens Bank Park. We'll be right back here talking to you next time on Phillies Focus. Peace.